at a time when the industry is desperately looking for a GST rate cut, some sort of intervention from the government ahead of the festive season. How do you feel about statements coming from the Chief Economic Advisor and also Mr. Arvind Panagaria, the former Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog?
Well, quite frankly, normally one would have dismissed these as being the views of academics. But frankly, the facts support them. And this has been my view also when I have said that all I believe one should look at is possibly a GST reduction in conjunction with the implementation of BS6, because look at the numbers. I mean, in terms of motorcycles, I was looking at these numbers yesterday. Year on year, the decline in retail sales is only around 5 to 7%. I don't know what it is for scooters because we don't make scooters anymore. And somewhere yesterday I read that about 5% is the retail decline for the passenger vehicle industry also year on year, for the April-July period. So the question really is that for a 5% or 7% decline in retail sales, if that can be called a crisis, then what is it that we mean by the normal up and down cycles of a business and the ability of robust businesses and business models to be able to absorb these minor shocks?
Right. So do you also feel that, and do you agree with Arvind Panagaria when he says that this also shows that the auto industry has probably not invested enough to be competitive globally as well?
I agree with Dr. Panagaria, I agree with Mr. Subbu, I agree with Mr. Jagannathan, the article he wrote some time back. And I'll tell you, there are 4 areas where I think the industry must first look at its own shortcomings before talking about stimulus to the government. The first is about the industry's domestic focus. Frankly, especially amongst the Indian firms, I will say this, TVS and ourselves are the only 2 companies that have any exports worth talking about. Today 40% of what we make is exported. I think it's about 20% for TVS. For the rest of them, it's 2%, 5%, 7%. So the first point is that if people had invested in global markets over the last 10, 15 years, as some of us have done, and if their exports had been 25% and not 5%, then a particular market like India being down for a period of time by 5 or 7% would not have hurt as much as it is apparently hurting now. I remember in 2015, a lot of people in the industry scoffed at Bajaj Auto because, in our preoccupation with exports, we were probably not doing justice to the domestic market. And at that time, export markets were down and India was doing well. Well, perhaps we were somewhat guilty of that, and I think we've corrected that in the last 15 months. But in the same vein, I would say to the industry that have you done enough in terms of becoming global? So that's the first issue. The second issue is, frankly, of mediocre products. A lot of these companies are not able to export because, frankly, by world-class standards, their products are mediocre. Now, obviously, I don't want to name them, but when you make everything, and this is my pet subject, when you will make scooters and bikes and cars and jeeps and SUVs and trucks and buses and everything under the sun, you're obviously not going to be really, really world-class at anything. So I think that's the second shortcoming in terms of mediocre products that the industry has to overcome. And that is what these gentlemen have referred to. Right. The third one is in terms of innovation in the domestic market, and we can talk about that if you like. And the fourth in terms of cost structure. Some of us, both in terms of operating costs and particularly, I will say, the auto industry, some manufacturers are guilty of imposing very, very high fixed costs on their dealerships. Right. And that is all very well and looks very glamorous in the good times, but it becomes a big millstone around the neck in the difficult times.
So that's the question that I'm coming to you. Mr. Subbu, the former president of Hyundai Motors India, has said that OEMs billing dealers is not equal to sales. Do you think this is an approach that the industry will have to follow in the days to come?
Well, certainly it makes complete sense to move to retail sales, and I think that all of us are doing. I think Tata Motors made that beginning a few months ago, and all of us are focused on now making sure that retail is at least equal to wholesale, if not higher. But the fact is that starting with September last year, when the industry in its ignorance, I would say, was anticipating an extraordinary festive season, and that didn't happen. Those stocks have continued to hang around for a while, and that's now getting corrected because nobody can carry this for much longer, given that we have to stop selling BS4 vehicles very soon. And therefore, there is this gap currently between wholesale and billing, which makes it look as if the industry is down by 15% or 20%, but the reality is it is not. It is down by only 5 to 7%. And I would agree that it's a difficult time, and the government should not make it worse by doing things like raising registration duties or charges at this stage, etc.
Right.
But whether 5-7% retail decline is enough for the whole industry to get together and scream for help, frankly, I'm not convinced about that, and at least I'm not party to that.
All right. So you're saying this fear-mongering is not required, and this is something that Arvind Panagaria also referred to in his piece. But going forward, the position that you're taking, Mr. Bajaj, is completely opposite to what the rest of the industry is saying. I think the industry in one voice is saying that they need a GST cut immediately. They need an intervention in the banking sector, in consumer finance, in inventory financing as well. They need a scrappage policy. They need a positive messaging from the government as well at this point. And they also say that there will be more losses in jobs. There have already been 3.5 lakh temporary jobs that have been lost. How do you respond to that?
Well, one by one, I would say, as far as positive messaging is concerned, for me, the only dissonance the government created was when they proposed this ban on electric vehicles, which all of us thought was a bit extreme. Now, that has been more than clarified by various ministers, including by the Prime Minister himself. So I think now that's a thing in the past, and we should not go there anymore. As far as the issue of financing, inventory financing, etc. is concerned, I don't know whether inventory financing itself is such a big issue for the large companies involved. I mean, all of us are wholesaling to dealers, extending credit, etc. Most of us are cash rich, and I don't think that's a big issue. Yes, retail financing to the consumer might be an issue, but again, Parikshit, over there, one has to understand that there may be a good reason for some of that pullback. Now, again, I don't want to take names, but let me tell you, for a long, long time, in every segment, whether it's scooters, motorcycles, three-wheelers, and I know also in trucks and light trucks, there have been manufacturers who have used their captive finance arms to shove product down the throats of customers when customers didn't really want to buy them. And then you end up a year later with 15-20% bad debts. Now, how is that good business? So if some companies, some NBFCs or others have pulled back in terms of retail financing, I think in many cases, that is for good reason. Now, as far as job losses, etc., are concerned, look, my view is this, that if indeed retail is down by 5 to 7%, at the most you can say that you need to correct employment by 5 to 7%, simplistically speaking. And frankly, at least I would not do that in Bajaj Auto, because I don't think I can build a strong, long-term, world-class business if my message to my employees down the line is going to be that, look guys, when the going is good, I want you to work here not as an employee, but with a sense of ownership. But when the going is tough by just 5%, I'm going to throw you out on your ass. Now, you tell me, if this is going to be the double speak, and we cannot cushion the shock for even 6 months or 12 months, especially when most of it is of our own making, in terms of some of the shortcomings we talked about, then how are we going to build a sense of ownership and commitment in our people?
Okay. That's again a very important point that you're making, and I don't know if the rest of the industry veterans would agree with it, Mr. Bajaj. But do you feel that even without a stimulus package, without a GST cut from the government or a cess reduction, the industry can handle this slowdown in profits, this slowdown in sales for the next 6 to 7 months till the time BS6 is rolled out from the 1st April 2020?
See, I'll answer in two parts. Today, for a company like Bajaj Auto, labor cost, everyone, the salary from the managing director to the watchman downward, is only 4% of sales. Even if I get rid of 10% of my people, I'm going to save 0.4%. I mean, is that 0.4% in EBITDA playing to the galleries on Dalal Street more important than the jobs of 1,000 people and the well-being of their families? I don't think so. That's not the measure by which I would like to run my company, for example. So that's one part. Secondly, as I already said, it's a difficult situation. I don't think I'm at variance there with the rest of the industry. There is a difficult situation. We want to grow by 10%. We don't want to degrow by 7%. So my submission to the government would continue to be in two parts. One, don't make a difficult situation worse by things like registration hike, etc. And two, because with BS6 there is going to be a significant hike in costs, and more importantly, at least in terms of 2 and 3 wheelers, I would submit that these are not luxury items. Like this chap was saying to Mangalam yesterday in terms of biscuits below 100 rupees a kilo or whatever it was. So these are things that the Aam Aadmi requires. So the government should seriously think whether 28% is the appropriate rate or whether it's 18%. Beyond that, all I would say is, even if we are not going to have growth for some period of time now, whether it's 6 months or 2 years, nobody knows. How does it matter? This is such a large market. There's, it's the largest 2 and 3 wheeler market in the world, and I keep saying, go beyond the borders of India. There's a whole world out there. The global market is bigger than the Indian market. I mean, it is the job of every enlightened management. It is our responsibility to be global players, and if we do that, as Dr. Panagria himself proposed, I remember when he organized the Champions of Change on behalf of the Prime Minister 2 years ago in August, one of the main themes was to create global markets for Indian companies to become multinational. I mean, somehow all that is lost in this argument.
All right, so you're saying that the industry must focus on substituting the fall in domestic sales with positive trends in exports. Would you also welcome this clarification that has come from Nitin Gadkari, who said yesterday that we're not planning to set any deadline for electric vehicles? Piyush Goyal also telling the industry that what Niti Aayog is proposing is not the view or not the policy view of the government.
Well, as far as Mr. Gadkari is concerned, I am extremely grateful to him, because from the first day when I approached him with my anxiety about this issue, he has been very clear and very supportive. As far as Mr. Goyal is concerned, I have met him more than once on this issue, and he has also been very, very clearly supportive of the industry, and he has always assured us that nothing disruptive will be done. But as I said, after all of that, when the Prime Minister himself has laid this issue to rest, I think nothing more needs to be said on this. The only thing I would say is, in response to your question, is that as an industry person, we cannot just ignore, or laugh off what Niti Aayog says, because the Prime Minister is the chairman of Niti Aayog. So when Niti Aayog or Dr. Kumar or Mr. Amitabh Kant say something, we have to take it seriously. And I think we were correct to take it seriously.
Okay, so you're saying it's correct to take it seriously, because that also somehow reflects the thinking within the government. But my final set of questions: are you also concerned about the inventory levels at dealerships for two-wheelers? FADA has spoken about serious concerns in the two-wheeler space, saying that there are 60 to 65 days of inventory in the two-wheeler space ahead of the festive season. What's your own outlook for the festive season going ahead?
I'm completely with FADA on this. In fact, I would plead guilty and say that the two-wheeler industry has not done enough to reduce dealer inventory, unlike perhaps the passenger car industry. I don't know about the commercial vehicle industry. And in fact, I would say to you that even until last month, according to data that we have on wholesale and retail, motorcycles again I'm talking about, I don't know about scooters, dealer inventory has perhaps gone up by another 100,000 units. So this is headed in the wrong direction. I can only submit that we are not guilty of that. Bajaj Auto is not guilty of that. And I think the way out is very simple. There is a festive season round the corner. Definitely sales are going to move up in the festive season. I think all of us would do well. At least this is going to be our strategy. I can't speak for anyone else. We are not going to push up wholesale as we do every year in the festive season. We are going to keep wholesale more or less similar to where it is today, maybe a tad higher, depending on how good the festive season is. And we are going to use the festive season to completely correct the stock at the dealerships, so that going ahead, the dealers are comfortable and we are comfortable in terms of implementation of BS6.
All right. And my final question, the auto industry has been saying that this slowdown, that is probably the worst in about 19 years, will have a negative impact on the economy and jobs going forward. You've already clarified that and shared your opinion on that. But do you today believe that there are larger issues that the economy is facing? And what would be your recommendations or roadmap that you may want to offer?
I know as much about how to fix the economy as the finance minister would know about how to fix a motorcycle. So I'm not a person to give gyan on the economy. Dr. Panagriya and others are available for that. But I would only say from my experience that look, today every KTM, every Husqvarna, every Ducati, every Triumph is looking at India, wanting to come here, appreciating the fact that we are a large market and we have great competitiveness when it comes to cost and quality. Right. So if Indian companies in this segment or in this sector cannot leverage this and create a name for India worldwide and a big business for themselves, then it is an opportunity that we are losing. And I don't think any stimulus is required to harness this opportunity.